Hello there, everyone. I'm going live again today. I just want to share with you some tips that I've just written down as some recommendations for a family that I work with. And this really applies to a lot of families I've been working with recently. I've been working on a lot of communication around that's linked to tolerating a delay or denial that we have to give, or pretty much telling our children no, or telling them that they can't have something right now. So sometimes this will trigger aggression, for sure. Sometimes this will trigger a some screaming or a meltdown or a tantrum. It could be any kind of behavior. So what we want to do is we want to teach a replacement skill. And to determine that, there are a few things we might need to go through. So I wanted to just go through some of these steps that I often take when I'm looking at trying to figure out what we need to do in this situation and how we need to respond, how we need to teach, and what we're going to do in the future to prevent. So the first thing I want to bring up is the function. So function comes first. I want you to think about what is the function of the behavior. What is your child trying to get out of this behavior? Maybe they started to go to scratch because you're talking a lot and they don't like the noise. So you've got to be a bit of a detective. Sometimes the function isn't obvious. So be a detective, be an investigator, take a step back, see what's happening around this behavior for you to determine the potential function. So a function could be to get something that maybe they're trying to get something that they want, something they've been denied. Maybe they want to avoid something they don't like. They want to avoid a demand. They want to avoid packing up. So what is the function? Function comes first. The second thing I want you to think about when we're talking about function is, what is your child trying to communicate? And that's what we're going to teach. So what are they trying to say instead of, what could they say instead of the inappropriate behavior? Now, if your child doesn't have communication skills that are expressive, like talking, then you might use a visual to prompt them to communicate. But I want you to think about what they're trying to communicate. So what are we going to do when we see behaviors that are aggressive? For example, perhaps you're really close to your child and they reach out and scratch you. So you're like, I don't know why they did that. I was helping them. They asked for help and now they're scratching me. Okay, so in this situation, I'm going to be a detective. Function comes first. Maybe they want control over the situation. Maybe they want space. Even though they wanted help, they might then be wanting to control the situation. That's often a big reason for our children's behaviors. So what are we going to teach them to communicate? We're going to teach them to say, space please, or go away, or no thanks, right? So we're going to prompt that communication. What I recommend you do is have a pen and paper handy, because you can use this to draw a picture or a speech bubble or a phrase to prompt your child to use that language. Now, for our kids, sometimes we might tell them, okay, you need to say, give me space or space please, and they refuse, right? They don't say anything because they're a bit already dysregulated, right? It's really difficult to communicate expressively when we're already dysregulated. So I want you to grab a pen and paper. You're going to write down what you want them to say in a speech bubble and get them to point to it. At least we can take their hand gently and prompt them to point to communicate. But we can't force them to speak. We can't follow through or teach them to speak when they're dysregulated, right? So here is an example. Right, here is just me drawing out some little pictures on my iPad, actually, that has a drawing app. And I do this on pieces of paper all the time. Whatever it is that I might want to teach the child to say or communicate. I might draw this, and this one says, when can I have it? And this one says, what can I have? I know it's, but what else can I have? And a choice, right? So this is specifically for when we're working on accepting a no response or not getting what they want. So they might ask, can I have a candy? And we're like, no, not right now. And then I would get the child to choose if they have the cognitive capacity and language capacity. I'd say, okay, choose a question to ask. You could say, when can I have it? Or what else can I have? Okay. And this helps your child gain control back, right? Because they have a choice around what they want to ask. Or if they respond to you saying, or you could ask a different question. Maybe they come up with their own question, which is totally fine. But this gives them a bit of control back into the situation. And then they get an answer that's not just a blanket no, they get an answer of when they can access that preferred item or activity. Or they get an answer for the other options that they have to choose from. So when you're giving another option or another choice, make sure you give 2, max 3 options. Often too many choices and our kids get really overwhelmed. So don't go give like 10 different choices for other activities. Give them 2 to 3 options. If they still refuse that, then I'll talk more about how we follow through with those kind of situations in the future. So we are prompting a communication phrase, right? We're prompting what they are going to say. If they don't say it, you'll take their hand and you'll get them to point to the phrase. So maybe that you're pointing to a phrase that says space, please. And then you're going to give them space. You're going to say, okay, I'll give you space. And you back right off and you reduce your engagement. For some kids, another example is sometimes noise is too much, right? Or us talking to other kids or talking to our partner, they don't like the noise. So they might come and it might seem out of the blue, but they come up to you and they push you or they hit you. And you're like, why? We weren't doing anything. I didn't give them a demand. I wasn't near them. So in these situations, it could be they don't like the noise. So we want to prompt them to say, quiet, or it's too noisy, right? And in that moment, we want to reinforce when we prompt them to point to the phrase that says too noisy or be quiet. We'll say, okay, we'll be quiet. But the important thing here is to remember that eventually your child does need to cope with noise, right? So you might say, okay, we'll be quiet for 1 minute and then we're going to talk again. Or you could give them an option. Yes, we'll be quiet, but first headphones, then we'll be quiet. So you might want them to put headphones on, or looking at teaching them to find a quiet space. Maybe they have a tent with pillows in it that they can go to find a quiet space, or they can go to their room where it's quiet. So yes, we want to teach and reinforce these communication phrases, but alongside that, sometimes we need to teach our kids to cope with the stimuli and the sensory stimulation that comes with that, so that they learn to balance getting control, and sometimes they're not always able to have that control. It's a good coping life skill to be able to learn that. All right. I want to mention the phrase prompt, then praise. So this is what we're doing. We're prompting, then praising / reinforcing the behavior. Reinforcing the behavior just means that we're giving the child the outcome they want. It doesn't necessarily mean we're giving them a candy or giving them their favorite toy or something additional. Sometimes it does mean that. But reinforcement is just giving the outcome they want so that the behavior increases in the future. So prompt, then praise. Keep that in your mind. Prompt, then praise. Okay. I want you to think of prompt, then praise method when your child is engaging in an inappropriate behavior, in aggression. I want you to prompt a communication response, then praise or reinforce them for that. Tell them, great asking. Yes, you can have that. Or great asking. I'll stop doing that for 5 minutes. Or, well done. You used your words. We don't need to go there. That's okay. We don't have to. So it depends on the situation. I'm going to go through a few quick phrases that you can prompt to support your child to communicate their needs. You can prompt a phrase that says, I can do it, right? So maybe you're helping them and they go and push you away. You can prompt the phrase, I can do it. And then you praise or reinforce them for that. You say, okay, you can do it, and step back. You could prompt the phrase, no thanks, for refusing something. Maybe they have their food and they push their plate away and scream, no, right? We don't want to reinforce the screaming. We want to reinforce the no thanks. So you're going to prompt the phrase, no thanks. And then when they say it, you're going to praise and reinforce. Prompt, then praise by removing the demand, even for a short period of time. You might prompt space, please. I've already mentioned that one. It might be quiet, please. And know that I'm saying please and putting these niceties at the end. To be honest, this is not important in my opinion. If your child does have sufficient language skills and they are cooperative with these phrases, add the nicety. But really, the key is that they're using an appropriate phrase such as quiet or no or I can do it. I don't care too much about the manners at the beginning, right? We just want clear communication to replace the inappropriate behavior. Another good phrase is my way. So I want to do it my way, or my way simply, or my turn. So all these kind of things. My way is a good one because it kind of covers everything. Like they want control over a situation, so you can just prompt them to say my way. Maybe you can't figure out exactly what is going on, but you just know they're in a bit of a fight mode of getting upset. So you can prompt them to say my way, and then you move back and you remove the demand from them. So that's reinforcing that appropriate communication phrase. All right. I am just going to see if I've covered all of my points from my notes. So, okay, one last thing I wanted to mention was when we are teaching these communication phrases, at the beginning, we want to reinforce the phrase at a high rate, right? So I would say 70 to 80% of the time, you want to honor your child's communication in that moment. And even if it's for a short period of time, right? So they are so used to getting an outcome from their aggressive behavior or other behaviors that we need to compensate for that by highly reinforcing the other types of positive behaviors and communication phrases. So 70 to 80% of the time when your child says my way or no thanks, we honor it. Once your child is communicating using those phrases more often than using aggression or meltdowns and tantrums, then you can fade it back. So then you might start to give them their way 60 to 70% of the time. Then it goes back to 40 to 50% of the time. So keep in mind that if you want to improve your child's behavior, you need to reinforce the alternative and appropriate behaviors much more often at a higher frequency, at a faster rate, especially at the beginning of their learning journey. So keep that in mind. In summary, I want to remind you, function comes first. Be a detective, be an investigator of your child's behavior. 2, prompt, then praise. So prompt the correct response, then praise and reinforce their new replacement behavior. And finally, a side note, have fun with your child. Take some time to just play, follow their lead, and engage and connect. That is super important. We always want that as our foundation, our connection with our child. All right, that's all for me for now. I will see you all next time. Bye.